Oh, I can see you now.
Yep, there you go. We're all started. Good. Hey, welcome back, everyone. This is Tom Neeson. Our weekly show of How'd I Get Here? And these are tips, blunders, and trips. And when I mean trips, I mean trips over yourself for salespeople, sales departments, and just basically anyone in general. So we kind of take certain myths and break them apart. And we also kind of look at maybe things that through experience we've thought of that we might not have thought of yet, or just re-energizing thing. Lucky for me today, I've got a guy on that I've known for a while, James Lafredo, from Des Moines, but now he's in Dallas working for a company called ResCap. And so, James, before I say anything more about you, why don't you introduce yourself? Kind of tell us what you do and who you are.
Hey, Tom. Yeah, most definitely. So, thanks for the introduction. My name is James Lafredo, and as Tom mentioned, currently with Residential Capital Partners down in Dallas, and have had the great pleasure of knowing Tom for, gosh, it's been that we're going on 8+ years now.
Wow.
Met at one of your deals that you put on for a group of potential customers, and think we've just been connected ever since. But um, from Des Moines, Iowa, as you mentioned, worked in a family business by the name of Lafredo Fresh Foods, and kind of worked my way up there. And that's actually where my sales career had started. Luckily enough, with Tom, not being a commercial for Tom or for Sandler, but I spent the vast majority of my sales career with Tom. And then, as I just wanted to expand my career, ended up making the venture to Dallas to join a private lender slash private equity group that does lending on residential real estate. So I've gotten my feet wet in a couple different industries and had Tom by my side along the way.
Yeah, and think about it. James came from um, a company that sells produce to restaurants and took a whole right turn and now is selling mortgages um, to house flippers. Is that's correct, right, James? I mean,
Yeah.
pretty simple. Is selling mortgages or money is what he's doing, and
Yep.
you know, and for some of us, we might complain about things and whatever. But here's a guy that took a total right turn, got into an industry basically knew nothing about, um, but took really his analytical expertise, and I really mean that because James, I would say you're probably a high C, aren't you?
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
say so.
he's a high C, very analytical, but he got into this business where it really is about numbers, and you got to know your stuff, and you got to really shuffle on your feet pretty quick when you're talking to somebody about flipping a mortgage or about doing something. It is not a long term sale. I mean, if you can't answer a person's questions right then and there and see if you can help them, because this person's trying to flip a house pretty quick. Um, Now, some of you might sit there and say, well, I'm in a long term sale, so whatever James says isn't relevant. Well, that's total BS because James has to make sales all along the way and he has to talk to people um, that aren't really need his service at the moment, but stay top of mind with that person, stay with that person. So when they do need his service, 2, 3, 4 months down the road, they call him. And I think that's one of the keys. But one of the things I found interesting recently, the other day, James, I heard this guy on YouTube. I think it was YouTube, and he's a guy that talks about sales and he complains about CRMs and what have you. But I thought it was interesting. He did this video on it's no longer a game of numbers. Sales is not a game of numbers.
Ooh.
And he says that if you walked into a room of 50 people, you wouldn't talk to all 50 people and qualify all 50. He says you'd be able to discern which one's got money and doesn't. And I was kind of embarrassed, but
Wow.
I'm gonna get your call on that because I believe you're just about numbers, correct?
I'm just about numbers. And honestly, when I first got started with Residential Capital Partners, we've grown a lot since then. We're blessed to have a great CRM that you would help us get set up and stuff, and kind of very large list on there of people who had never been reached out to and stuff. We were blessed to have that when I started. And for myself, it's all been a numbers game. And, the stats are there to prove it. Once again, you said I'm a numbers person. But I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, it really is. And just to prove it to myself sometimes, as salespeople, we have a love hate relationship with the phone, and you're constantly, at this point, luckily, 2 years in, I do have people that call me, but you're constantly getting numbers and you have to sort through it and have the conversations. But a perfect example of that is I was talking to the team the other day and had just 2 or 3 solid weeks of talking to people, wasting time, obviously getting to the know, but still having those conversations. And you get a call yesterday, and it's a guy who has a $30 million deal. So it is about numbers. You have to reach out to all those people. You have to talk to everybody in the room. You have to pick up every phone call. You have to make every call on your list. Uh, you don't have to do anything, actually. I take that back. You want to be successful, though. I believe that's how you do it in this game. And I love technology. I use technology. I use artificial intelligence. I use CRMs. You still have to talk to everybody, though. And if you don't, you're not going to be one of the top.
Right, right, yeah. So, think about what we've done so far. You talked about it's a game of numbers, and when we look at that, if you are a salesperson and do not understand what your numbers are, I think it makes a weird difference, right? I mean, how do you go and know what you're supposed to do today if you don't know your stats, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I think salespeople don't maybe want to make it a game of numbers, but in today's world, if you don't know what what you're supposed to do in the morning, what you're supposed to do in the afternoon, if you don't know how many people you need to talk to, if you don't know how many current customers you should be talking to get referrals, if you don't know how many current customers you need to talk to, or who you need to meet at a current customer to grow that sale, if you don't know that stuff, then you're just shooting from the hip. And if you're shooting from the hip, it's like you said, you're probably going to make a living, but you might not make
Yeah.
money, right?
Without a doubt. I couldn't agree more. And I think that's what separates the people who are great in sales, though. I mean, there's little things. Obviously, skill set is one, but knowing what you have to do at the end of the day. I mean, in sales, it's up and down. Even within, people talk about in sales weeks and months, but even in a day, you can be having a great morning and a bad afternoon, or vice versa. And you know what? If you're not doing the numbers, though, you're never going to get to those greats from the bad or even just the good. So,
Right. So tell me, let's switch lanes a little bit and tell me about maybe a blunder you've had. I mean, you went from one industry to another. Tell me, some we can always learn from our failures and our blunders. Tell me about maybe a blunder you had that said, "Wow, this really messed up. I wish I would have done this different."
yeah, I mean, personally, going from a different industry, obviously you have different personalities, you have a different sales cycle, a different sales type. Um, I would honestly say, I mean, I could drill into a specific blunder, but the more I think about it, for me, starting in a new industry with no current book of business, starting from ground zero, which I'm sure you have some people who listen who, are getting into sales or starting sales. Um, for me, it wasn't utilizing what you and I had worked on in the past, how to actually sell. I was, nervous, not making a living at the moment, and I would I would sell in the worst way possible. It was like a car salesman. I would, um, almost beg and plead for a sale. And, as you step back and realize that you have to still follow your processes, you have to, use the Sandler way, be question based, not try and sell people, try and, be a consultant with them. So I think that we all go through cycles, whether you're starting off in sales, starting off in a different type of sales, you're sort of in a slump. Sometimes your finesse of sales and stuff, you slip a little bit and you start to get needy. And I would say that was my biggest blunder, and it's a big blunder I see with a lot of other salespeople. So I would say it's always, sticking with your game plan, sticking with your numbers, sticking with your, in my case, I do use Sandler, so my Sandler sales techniques and stuff, and not getting into my head. And, it's hard when you're starting off, just getting to the know with people. You find someone who you think might be a fit on your end. It's just like a relationship. You might
Right.
think it's a fit, they might not, but you don't get why they won't just buy the damn thing from you. And so I would say that was my biggest blunder in my sales career.
Yeah.
Not dive one specific instance.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a good point. And for those of you that don't know, one of the things I preach, and James knows, is going for the no. And what I mean by going for the no is always double checking. Just because you have a great deal and it matches what they want and what they need doesn't mean that you're a right fit. And so if you constantly go for that yes, you'll never know the truth. But if you sit there and say, hey, James, it sounds like everything's a fit, but I get the feeling that maybe it's not an exact fit, which gives James the opportunity to tell me, well, to be honest, I don't like this. But
Exactly.
we get that positivity going, and you do that, and what you do is you waste a lot of time, and you also waste a lot of this stuff, money, right?
Waste a lot of that. I
Yeah.
honestly, and I fell for it, and I'd been trained by you for years, and I was good at it before, but went into a new industry, and someone would tell me yes, and that same sucker still telling me yes 2 years from now, or 2 years from then, and I haven't made a single dollar off of it. So,
And so that's a great point. I mean, James just brought up, you might say he's a transactional seller, but here's a guy who's been working for 2 years trying to get that business. So one of the things I want salespeople to think about is when you encounter somebody or listen to somebody like me, our initial thing is, well, that doesn't work in my world. And I want you to think about here, James are very transactional because when something happens, they got to move. But he's got a year to sell somebody, or maybe 2 years, or maybe 3 or 6 months. And so I think each one of us can learn something from some other salesperson as to what they do and how they do it. And it's too easy. I see people that just sit there and immediately shuffle something off and say it doesn't work here, right? And James, you've probably seen that from time to time.
yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
So just kind of to wrap up, is there any advice or tips you might be able to give to a new salesperson or someone starting an industry or a new kid out of college that says, I want to get into sales and move
Yeah.
forward?
I love that, because I feel like I'm always trying to learn, and that's one of the things, especially with you, and we always have even the personal conversations. Is there's really two things for me, and I feel besides getting the opportunity to work with you is one, always be learning. Um, you and I talk about this. Even if you see junk on YouTube or Instagram or online, sometimes seeing what doesn't work is just as good. But always be learning. There's a ton of great books out there on selling, even if they're not Sandler based, that apply Sandler methods deep within the psychology of it. So I would say always be learning, always be meeting people. I would say talk to everybody in the room, always, even if you're not trying to sell something. And at the end of the day, you have to have fun with it. I mean, we're in this, it's a psychology game, even if you don't know that it is. And you have to have fun with it because it'll be tedious if not. And if you don't enjoy it and have fun and understand the deep back end of it, it takes away from it. And once again, you can continue to learn about that just by reading and learning more about Sandler, but always keep learning and always have fun with it.
I love that. So 2 lessons today. Number 1, It is all about the numbers. And actually, I think it ties together, James. I think if you know your numbers, you can have fun. But if you don't
Yeah.
know your numbers and you get frustrated because you're working really hard, but nothing's happening. And if I know my numbers, it's a fun day because if I know I'm supposed to do these things, this number of things, whether it's phone calls, whether it's customer calls, whether it's how many times I ask for a referral or how many emails I send out, whatever it is, I can have a great end of the day. But what happens is you don't do that stuff. I'll give you an example. I'm a good salesperson. Let's say I'm supposed to sell $100,000 a month, and the first week of the month, I sell $150,000. Even as a good salesperson, I'm probably taking my foot off the gas a little, right? Might play a few more rounds of golf. But if I understand my numbers, that I have to do my numbers every day, then that makes a difference. Because if I take my foot off the gas the next 3 weeks, might not affect me for 3 months, right? Because those 3 months later is when my prospecting actually comes to fruition and dies. So, good point. Hey, James, I want to thank you. One of the things we'll be talking about in the future is journaling. And one of the things I'm bringing up is I'm going to put out to everybody is my bagels. So I know James journals, and I think he uses bagels, but bagels is one of the things we've used for a long time, and especially for sales. So that's going to be coming forward in the next couple of weeks. But James, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for hopping in, and we really would love to have you back again at some point.
I would love that. And honestly, that's another key piece is the journaling. Since I've met Tom, I have the same Moleskine journal. I highly recommend finding one that you like. And I think I have 6 volumes now. And it's extremely helpful, no matter what industry you're in, but especially in sales. There's always ideas, always nuggets from stuff you learn. So I love that. And also, quick mention, Tom, we talked about numbers.
Yeah.
For people who aren't familiar with Sandler, if they could find some resource to learn a little bit about cookbooks and what those are and learning their numbers, that was something that's tremendously helped me and every organization I'm in. So,
Well, good. And if anybody has interest, we'll put it in the comments. But my email is tom@salesmadeeasy.com. Feel free to email me, and I'll be more than happy to send you cookbook information and bagel information.
excellent.
Great, James. Thanks so much for your time. And we'll see everybody next week on How Did I Get Here?